You see, the danger here, and this is where people need to be very careful, in your persuasion to try to get approved into a particular category, the aim here is not for you to prove that you are experienced in terms of practice or clinical work in a particular field. Because the minute you do that, it might actually be an indictment on yourself to say that you have practiced outside the scope of practice. That is why they've put that caveat there, to make you aware that what they are looking at when you are applying to be considered is the knowledge. You need to show that you have got the knowledge, you have got the competency, but you are not proving that you have actually practiced in that particular category. Because then by proving that, you are actually saying to them, I confirm that I practice outside my scope. Greeting friends, I welcome you, and I'm so excited to be able to deal with this matter because I've been getting a lot of questions from this community that came from the HPCSA about the Developmental Pathway program for the profession of psychology. And I've been getting questions, people asking me, whether do I know about it, have I heard about it, what does it imply? And I remember replying to my social media that I will respond to this and make a video when I've got all the details about it. And what I did, I consulted with the HPCSA just to get clarity around the communique, so that at least when I do this video, I'm fully informed about it. You might have seen it or heard about it, but I'm sure majority of you have seen it. But it is not new to me. I've been telling the people that actually there was a communique that came out, I think in 2022, and that one, it was about the application for transverse registration, and it came out in 2022, and there was an update about it in 2023. I remember I did a video. If you have not seen the video, there's a video which I've done, which I titled Converting Your Registration Category. So that video is very important because it provides an essential background. You will see with this current communique that came out about the developmental pathways, they actually refer to that particular communique. So if you have not seen the video, you can watch the video. It was about application for transverse application, and I'm going to show you at the end the difference between the two, because I think when you know the difference between the two, it will better help you understand the current communication that we have, that we are dealing with, because that one in particular dealt only with clinical psychology, educational, and counseling. So it was limited to only these three professional categories. But this one is open for everybody. Now I want to start there to show you what does the communique say and what is actually aiming to do. So this communique was actually, you will see when you read actually the first sentence or the first paragraph, it specifically states that this actually were developments from what happened with the transverse registration process, which ended, I think it was about 2024 or end of 2023 in December. That's when it ended. However, because that particular application process were only open for clinical, counseling, and educational, I mean, HPCSA received a lot of complaints that or other professionals who felt they were excluded, which made sense. I mean, how do you give such an opportunity to only 3 categories when you have got 6 of them registered? Actually 8 if you add the registered counselors and psychometrists, but it was only open for 3. It was fair. I think the complaints were fair, but what HPCSA then did as a response to that, they came up with this developmental pathway program for the profession of psychology. There are significant differences between the two, which I'm going to get into, but firstly I want to just tell you what this developmental pathway is all about, so that at least you can take the opportunity and apply for it. So what is this all about? So this pathway program is basically giving all the professionals registered under the Board of Psychology an opportunity to apply to be approved as professional within other categories which they were not previously registered under. For example, as you can see on the table below, somebody who's a registered counselor can apply to become a psychologist, educational can apply to become clinical, or counseling to become clinical, or clinical to become educational. So basically, you must determine which field you feel like you are competent in and you want to be recognized into or get the professional registration in that particular category. The good thing about it is that after you apply and you are approved, you will keep both categories. You will keep both registration. You don't lose or forfeit the current one that you have. In other words, if you are a counseling psychologist and you apply to be considered for clinical psychology, the minute you are approved on this one, on clinical psychology, you still keep the other one, so you don't lose the category. I think that's one of the areas that they had to clarify in the community that came later. But the other thing about it is that you need to meet the minimum requirements. You need to have been registered for 3 years. In other words, anybody, if you count from 2025 backwards, maybe from 2021, those people will qualify to apply as long as they are registered with the Board of Psychology. And it is open for anybody registered with the board. When you read actually that sentence, initially when I read it, it was not clear because they actually also mentioned something about as long as you are practicing, but they were not clear that you are registered with the Board of Psychology. So it could have created an impression that it's open for other people who are not registered with the Board of Psychology but are registered with other non-statutory bodies. I've clarified that it does not include those ones. Those who are registered with other statutory bodies, if you don't know what I'm talking about, I've done a video where I speak about the difference between registration with HPCSA and registration with the statutory body. It's still a recognized profession or practice to register with non-statutory bodies. It is there. I mean, I've spoken more about it. You can watch the video to learn more about it. I think they still have a contribution that they make to the profession, the health profession in general. But here, they only want people who are registered currently with the Board of Psychology, which makes sense. I mean, if you look at the table when you're applying, you have to choose between the 8 categories, which are the 6 psychology categories, and the registered counselor and the psychometrist. You can see here, there's no any non-statutory registration. There's no wellness counselor. There is no any other category that are not designation of the Health Professions Council. But if you want to learn more about that, the difference between the two, you can watch this video. I've elaborated on it, I've clarified, and what does it mean in terms of your profession. So that's actually the requirements. But obviously, I mean, you could see when you look at the letter that was released on the 4th of February, there were a lot of questions, and I had a lot of questions. And when I contacted the HPCSA, I knew I was informed that they're going to release a communique, and that is why I waited for the communique that they released recently, which came out on the 11th. The whole aim of it was to clarify some of the questions that we have. One of the questions that arose, and I saw many people actually on social media were reacting to it, is for the fact that psychometrists and registered counselors could move and register to be psychologists, and people felt, they will lack the clinical experience or training that is required to become psychologists. So it raised a lot of debates, but I think HPCSA actually did explain that. If you actually read the initial communique, it made it very clear that that particular knowledge or practice should not be restricted to a direct clinical care, because you see, the danger here, and this is where people need to be very careful, in your persuasion to try to get approved into a particular category, the aim here is not for you to prove that you are experienced in terms of practice or clinical work in a particular field. Because the minute you do that, it might actually be an indictment on yourself to say that you have practiced outside the scope of practice. That is why they've put that caveat there, to make you aware that what they are looking at when you are applying to be considered is the knowledge. You need to show that you have got the knowledge, you have got the competency, but you are not proving that you have actually practiced in that particular category. Because then by proving that, you are actually saying to them, I confirm that I practice outside my scope, the scope of profession or the scope in which you have been trained in. So be careful on how you write your submission and also provide your proof of evidence, because that's where the tricky comes. You might end up having your application leading you to be investigated by the professional conduct inquiry if you end up providing information that becomes an indictment on you. You end up providing information that become an admission on your side, or an admission on your side that you have practiced outside your scope of knowledge. So be careful of that, and I'm going to share more about that later. But one of the things that they've clarified on this communique that came later was actually the emphasis on the fact that you are not forfeiting your previous registration. What actually going to happen is that you are actually adding a new category, a new registration. If you are an educational, you apply for clinical, you keep both. You are not forfeiting any, as it happened previously with the transverse registration. And the second thing that they clarified was that you need to be willing to do internship for 12 months or 6 months, depending on the category. For example, if you are a psychometrist, you apply to be a registered counselor. You are going to do internship for registered counselor for 6 months and also write the board exam, and vice versa. But if you are a psychologist in any category and you want to apply for another category of a psychologist, you must be ready to do internship for that particular category and be able to also write the board exam. What I noted, however, is that, and you will see when they emphasize it about the issue of internship, that they want to make sure that you apply, but they are also open for tailored internship program. What I got a sense when I speak to them is that I think they are flexible. They are flexible and open to negotiations when people want to apply to do internship at their private practice. Because remember, this is more like a special process. It's not the common, training process that one will follow in order to register. So I think there is an understanding that people are already at their private practice, people are already working, so people can leave their work in order to go do internship. So just keep that in mind. When you apply, you should have that opportunity to do that your own practice or your own work. You need to be flexible. They're not saying it in simple words, but what I could read, what I could discuss with them, there is that sense, that they might be open for that. It will depend on how you tailor your internship program and apply for that. Because remember, even now, before this communique came out, HPCSA has always been open for tailored internship process. But I think from what I could gather, remember with internship, we're only allowed to do 3 months at a private practice, but there seems to be that flexibility that 12 months might be allowed. You just need to engage with them and make that application, because really, this is totally new thing in terms of somebody doing the internship already in the center of their profession and experience. And the other thing, which I think was a big debate, was the issue of registered counselors and psychometrists. On this clarity now, what they've done, and I want you to read it carefully, it says that registered counselors and psychometrists may apply to be considered for the research psychologist category. It does not say they will only be considered for research psychology category, because that's something that, you see, this clarification that came on the 11th was supposed to clarify all the issues that we have, but I think it also raised other questions, and I also had to clarify it again to say, what are you saying? Are you saying only, or are you saying they may? So the may there implies that the chances are likely high that you are likely to be approved if you apply for the research psychology category. In other words, it will be easier for you to submit proof of evidence for it than any other category. It does not say you should not apply for any other category. For example, registered counselor, for me, it should easily be able to apply to become a counseling psychologist. So why will you not want to apply? Because remember, the good thing with this application, you are not losing anything. You are not forfeiting your category, you are keeping both. So even if you apply and they reject you, you have not lost anything besides your time to apply. So I will say, don't only be restricted to research just because you are a psychometrist. It just implies if you go for research, chances are very high you are going to easily show the competency and be able to apply for it and likely to get approved. There's no guarantee here. We all apply and they might approve it. I think what they make it very clear is that they are going to require a comprehensive proof of evidence, and you need to make sure that you review the minimum standards for whatever category you are applying for. So that's one thing that they make it very clear. It seems like there's going to be a very rigorous process in reviewing all the application. On that note, what we have done, we've actually compiled a guideline that can help you apply. I know most of you, actually majority of people, I've come across them, they lack the skill or knowledge on how to compile a portfolio of evidence. And I don't blame people, because this is not what we have often been trained at varsity, on how to compile a portfolio of evidence, particularly for professional development. So it's a process that requires skill, because you need to show evidence that is relevant and aligned to what you're applying for. So for that note, there's this guideline by the bill publishers that I recommend that you get. It will help you when you apply. Make sure that when you apply, you refer to it. It guides you on how to compile this portfolio of evidence. It is designed particularly for application for the developmental pathway, but it also has information that can guide you should you get CPD audits. So what it will do, it will provide you with a template as well that you can use. This template is in Word document. You can actually use the template in order to fill all the details. The template has got information within it that guides what kind of information is important. It shows you the competencies that are crucial and how to tackle them. So what we have done, and also how to link the minimum standard and the portfolio of evidence. What we have done, we've actually designed two templates. One for people who want to apply for clinical psychology. Already from the people I spoke to, majority of people are going to apply for clinical. And you clinical people, can you please relax? Please relax. You don't own the psychology board or psychology profession. I mean, there are some people, when people want to apply for clinical, it's like as if they're going to take their clients or they're going to take their job. Can you relax, clinical? Those who want to come for educational, we don't have a problem. We love all professionals in the field. Clinical, relax, please. Can you relax? Relax, please. Psychology board is for everybody in psychology. Don't be like the older brother. When the prodigal son come home, you are angry. Can you relax? Relax and welcome other people in your category, please. So, clinical people are my friends. So, the two templates are there. Make sure that you get this booklet. It will help you. Some of you, I've worked at university as the acting director for the Center for University Teaching and Learning. One of my roles that I used to do was actually to compile evidence for the performance of the entire university. And you know, I have noticed that compiling evidence is an issue for people. It's an issue for people, and I want to help you to make it easy. So get this booklet. It will help you and guide you, and you'll get all those templates. You'll be able to download them and work from them. They will guide you. And they are based actually on the requirements, but also on other information within the Health Professions Council that will guide you on how to compile a convincing evidence or portfolio of evidence that you can submit into. And also, if you are involved in CPD audits and whatever, and you want to make sure that you are compliant, this booklet will also help you with that. To get the booklet, there's a link below this video. If you are on YouTube, there's a link below this video. Make sure that you click on that link. It's written a portfolio of evidence guideline. Get that, and it will help you in compiling your own evidence. Now, in summary, I'm concluding. I want to now just conclude by showing the difference between the developmental pathway program for professionals in psychology and the transverse registration. How do they differ? Because some people, they know the transverse. I hear people when they call me, they're asking me and they're speaking as if they're referring to the transverse. Transverse registration was for people who were registered prior to 2011, because this were the people, if you have been a psychologist for longer time, you'll know that there are people, psychology in the past, most people, you find a counseling psychologist could register, could attend with the clinical, they will share certain classes. So most of the people who were trained prior to 2011, some of them felt that they were trained in fields that they're not practicing in, although they are registered in certain categories. So they felt they had more expertise, competencies to register in other categories, but they were not allowed because they had to choose one. So they made it for them. So all the people prior to 2011, they were given an opportunity to come and tell us which competency you have, which field you want to register in. And they were registered, they applied, it closed. I think at this point they're busy with the appeal, but that process has ended in 2024. It's no longer open. It is closed, it's done. The difference between these ones, the transverse and the current one, those guys, the transverse one, they were forfeiting their current registration. So if I'm an educational, I applied for clinical. The minute I get a clinical, I forfeit. The day I pass the board exam and I get a letter from HPCSA, I will then lose the previous one. With the current one, the developmental pathway program, you keep both categories. That's one of the key distinctions among them. The transverse one was only open for clinical, counseling, and educational. This one is open for everybody as long as you are registered with the Professional Board of Psychology. You can't come and say, no, I've got Psychology of Education from UNISA. I'm not registered with the board, but I want to now register. No, it's not for you. It's only for people registered currently with the board. You are either registered as a registered counselor, psychometrist, or you are one of the 6 categories: neuro, educational, clinical, industrial. No other non-statutory, well-being and whatever is not for you. It's only for people registered with Psychology Board at the moment. I hope that is clear. The requirement for the previous one I said was from 2011. The current one, only 3 years requirements. As long as you have been registered for 3 years, you can change. You can change, and I'm making it simplified. Not that if you apply, you are just going to be accepted. You might, but you can apply. You are not forfeiting. You keep the 2 categories, and the similarities between all of them is that you have to choose one category. You can't apply for both. Look, I've engaged them on this particular matter, and I thought, let's say, for example, somebody wants to apply for, you are a registered counselor, and you saw that notice, you want to apply for research and counseling, psychology. You are not sure which one will be. My recommendation will be, this is not what HPCSA told me, but this is what I could make sense. So when you apply, you must think about it practically. They are going to get your application. They are going to print it and give it to a committee. There will be a committee that review those who apply for clinical. There will be a committee that review those who apply for education. There will be a committee that review those who apply for research. So if you want 2 categories, if you want to be reviewed for 2 and you are not sure which one is going to be approved, I will say make 2 separate applications. 2 separately application, because they're not going to print 2 copies for you. Have 2 separate ones, submit them separately. Don't have one email is for both. No, just have one, so that when they print it, they send it to the right committee, it's reviewed. They send it to the right committee, it's reviewed. Remember, after approval, you still have to do internship. You still have to do the board exam for you to be accepted into that category and register. So you can, when you are approved, to say, I applied for 2, I've been approved for both, I'm choosing this one. So I think what they have done with the research counseling, registered counselors and psychometry, they wanted to reduce a number of applicants which are likely not going to be approved. But I will say, if you really trust yourself, you have got the evidence, you can prove that you've got the competency, apply. It didn't say only, you can only become a research psychologist. It said you may. So research psychologist is one of them that you may apply for. Nothing has changed. If you look at the table there at the bottom, it still has registered counselor. It has all the categories on the right. Nowhere does it say, okay, these ones we've limited them. There's no limitation. Only that. I think this you need to note it. You are likely going to find it easy to prove that you are competent in the research. Because why? If you do masters, this is the other thing I forgot to mention. You must have a masters. And the masters, if you are a registered counselor or psychometrist, you must have a masters. But the masters must be relevant to psychology, or must be relevant to the field or category you are applying for. So the other thing about it is that you must think about it. Every masters is going to, at least the masters in psychology, they're going to involve research, this is why it makes it easy for you to be approved in the research psychology field. Not all the masters are going to have the clinical. However, as a registered counselor, you are going to have certain elements of working with client, some form of clinical work, although you might be limited in terms of your scope. So it's up to you to compile your evidence. There is a guideline for you that you can use. Compile your evidence in a way that is very convincing. Don't limit yourself. The same with industrial and psychometry. If you are a psychometrist, you feel you can try for industrial. Nothing limits you. Nothing limits you. But obviously, similar to the counseling, if you've got a master's that is relevant, you are likely going to find it easier to be approved in the research psychology category than any other field. But that doesn't limit you from applying for industrial if you feel like you will be able to provide the required evidence. So friends, that's it in terms of what this pathway, developmental pathway program for profession psychology, for the profession of psychology. So I encourage you that if you are not like me, happy with your category, apply. As for me, I'm so happy with my category, so I'm not applying. So you won't find me on the queue. But you who feel like you want to add, and I want to encourage you, there's nothing wrong. For me, I feel if you feel like it is going to give you more advantage to have both, you have nothing to lose. You have nothing to lose at all. I do encourage you, apply. Because if they reject you, what have you lost? You have not lost your category. All that you have lost is the time to compile it. But the question is, what if they approve you? What if they approve you? You see, you just have to worry about doing your internship and writing the board exam. Then you've got two categories. You are more flexible. You can, branch into two scopes of practice. That's all. You see? So I will encourage you that if you really feel it will give you an advantage, apply. You've got nothing to lose. You are not forfeiting any of your category. The transverse one can say, I regret, I should have just stayed in mine. But with this one, you are not losing anything. You've got both categories with you. Let me end it there and remind you, if you want to get the booklet, click the link below this video, and I encourage you that you continue living life to the fullest. I'm out.